Hello and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and professional witch, and today I'm talking about tarot and goats. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it for free is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. If you weren't able to attend live or didn't register in time, you can get my tarot card crafting workshop with the full recording, step-by-step method, examples of cards I've created, and PDF to walk you through it for just $33. I'm also going to be offering at the end of August a 12-week Tarot for Transformation live course. If you're interested, you can sign up for that in the show notes as well. I just updated my Patreon benefits to be bigger and better than ever, so if you want an individual card pulled for you once a month live on the podcast during the New Moon Collective Tarot readings, join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family at the lovers level. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area, join us at our next Let's Talk Tarot meetup group event. And if you're interested in my free PDF with the 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you at the beginning of this year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. And if you don't already know, I am a sex and relationships therapist and coach, seeing clients virtually all over from my home office. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. And if you'd like to work with someone that doesn't judge you, is witchy just like you, and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain and illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, head to my website and book a consultation now to start your journey. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull on each episode. Welcome to Season 12. In Season 12, I'm talking all about tarot and animals, and we're almost to the end here, wrapping up with this episode and one more. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. I've talked tarot basics. I've gone through every single card, one per episode for all 78 cards in the tarot deck. I've talked tarot and pop culture, common tarot spreads, tarot and witchcraft, tarot and plant allies. And like I said, in this season, I'm talking all about tarot and animals, and today talking about tarot and goats. So I'll go through an animal description, we'll talk animal symbolism, and then its relation to the tarot. So the goat, or domestic goats, Capra hircus in Latin, is a species of goat/antelope that is mostly kept as livestock. It was domesticated from a wild goat of Southwest Asia and Eastern Europe. It's a member of the Bovidae family, meaning it's closely related to sheep. It's one of the first animals to be domesticated in Iran about 10,000 years ago. Goats have been used for milk, meat, wool, and skins across much of the world. Milk from goats is often turned into cheese. In 2022, there were more than 1.1 billion goats living in the world, of which 150 million were in India. And goats feature in mythology, folklore, and religion, right? If we think about them being domesticated, so, right, they were around beforehand, but then kind of became domesticated by humans about 10,000 years ago. That's a long time to have spent. And so they are woven into our mythology and lore, including in different myths. So there's like the goats that pulled the chariot of the Norse god Thor. There's a Scandinavian Yule goat. And in Hinduism, there's a goat-headed Daksha. In Christianity and Satanism, the devil is sometimes depicted as a goat. And we will talk about that as we get more into the cards aspect. Let's see here. Yeah, so again, they're one of the earliest animals to have been domesticated by humans. It says they're probably related to the wild bezoar ibex found today in the Zagros Mountains, but were widespread before then. Neolithic farmers began to herd wild goats primarily for access to milk and meat, and they also used their droppings or dung for fuel for fires, and would use bones, hair, and sinew for other clothing, building, and tools. So again, humans and goats have been interwoven for a very long time. there are different, breeds of goats across the world. So they can really vary in size and weight and things like that. Most goats naturally have 2 horns, shape and size depending on the breed. And then sometimes if you see goats as livestock, they'll have had their horns kind of like, I don't totally remember how they do it, but kind of like, I think like burned off when they're young so that they don't have horns, which can be safer if they're going to be around children, for example. Goats are ruminants, so they have a 4-chambered stomach that has these different, purposes. In that they, nurse their young. Sheep and goats are closely related. They're both in the subfamily Caprinae. However, they are separate species. Let's see. So visual differences, if you're going to try to tell is this a sheep or a goat, goats have beards, females and males do, and they divided upper lip of sheep. That's very interesting. Sheep's tails hang down even when they're short or docked, which means like cut off again when they're young, while short tails of goats are point up. Let's see, sheep breeds are often naturally polled, which means like without horns. So naturally, so instead of like humans taking them off, they naturally come like that. Obviously, if you see like bighorn sheep or more wild sheep, they do have horns, whereas naturally polled goats are rare. So again, if you see, if it's in someone's farm and you see that it has horns or has even a space where the horns might have been, right? You could usually still see it, even if they've been taken off, then those are usually goats. Goats are very curious, they're agile and able to climb and balance. Again, if you've ever seen like mountain goats or anything like that, it's incredible the places that they can get to. They can stand, they're very like well balanced. They can stand, put all 4 of their feet into like a very, very small area if they were out in the mountains and again on the edges there. Goats are seen as intelligent as dogs by some studies. Goats display less herding behavior than sheep, so they're a little more independent, and this is also part of why they have a reputation of being more challenging to keep as livestock, mostly because they like to get out. Sheep really don't want to be separated from each other. They are much more of a like natural herding animal. They're more skittish. They don't really like to be separated at all from each other and get very freaked out if they do, but goats handle that a little bit more and therefore also inevitably escape. So if any fencing can be overcome, goats will try it. And they are very social as well. Let's see what else. But yeah, so and again, I think part of this association with the devil, we'll talk about as we get more into the tarot cards, is because of this. So it's talked about that like sheep can be herded. They all go along with the kind of the crowd, whereas goats do their own thing. And this was seen as a devilish in the past because they are a little bit more mischievous or seen that way. They'll eat almost anything. So again, there's like old, I don't know, I remember reading like children books as a kid, picture books where goats would eat tires or other things, so they can be very destructive too, like on a farm. They're not grazers like cattle or sheep, which means like they don't just eat grass. They'll eat more like bramble, but also they'll eat cardboard and clothing or paper. So they'll eat anything, chew and taste anything resembling plant matter to decide whether it's good to eat. So again, if you've ever had little kids or been around toddlers where they're sort of trying to, or even babies where they're trying to get to understand the world by putting a lot of things in their mouth. Goats also like to do this. They'll try anything. And again, this makes them also sort of smart, right? They have an ability to decide like whether it's a good thing to eat or not. But it also means that again, on a farm, they're seen as sort of rambunctious and mischievous because they might get out and eat your whole garden, or like they might get out and eat things that maybe they shouldn't really eat, like tires or paper or clothing. Life expectancy for goats is between 15 to 18 years. Goats have been reported of reaching over the age of 24. Let's see. Yeah, so goats like to graze, but they also will eat bramble. So like where I live, we have a lot of Himalayan blackberries that are invasive here and take over any sort of area that is very, like doesn't have very good soil and ditches or, side of the road. Very often Himalayan blackberries are there, and most grazing livestock will not eat that, right? Because it's not grass, it's like plant material, and also it's very bramble, like it's very sharp, they're really thick, what am I trying to say? Like ropey, but branching of these type of blackberries. They're very challenging to get rid of. And so people where I live will have goats come in and like people will have whole businesses where they have herds of goats that will come in and eat bramble like blackberries down to the bottom, and then maybe burn the end of it or things like that. But they're a lot more willing to eat things that are again more like shrubs. So if grass, right, is like your ground cover, then you have bushes or shrubs as sort of like other things, right? They'll eat those. Some sheep will eat stuff like that too, but they're mostly eating like the leaves and stuff, whereas goats will eat like the whole material. So again, they get used a lot around where I live because they're one of the only, they're a very simple way to deal with these Himalayan blackberries that are not native to this area and are very aggressive. All right, so they've been used to clear unwanted vegetation for centuries. They've been described as eating machines and biological control agents. They've been used as herds to clear dry brush from California hillsides that have been, where there's concern about wildfires, so they'll eat down the stuff that could potentially catch. And yeah, like I said, where I live, there's places like Rent a Goat or just private herd companies where they bring them in on a trailer. Yeah, so even in Wikipedia, it says the practice has become popular in the Pacific Northwest because where they are used to remove invasive species not easily removed by humans, including thorned blackberry vines and poison oak. They've also been used to control kudzu, which is an invasive plant species prevalent in the southeast part of the United States. Anyway, there's lots of other things about goats, but let's get into, and honestly, it depends on where you are, but there are certain cultures that eat goats. A lot of people in the United States may have never eaten a goat or anything like that, but that is definitely a thing that can also be done. They get milked and make different kinds of goat cheese, which you can find, at the grocery store, but there are a lot of cultures that also eat goats. And again, if you have more rocky terrain instead of pasture, so not just grass, but you have a lot of shrubbery or you have a lot of rocks, goats are going to be a lot more well fit to that area than sheep will be, because if you think of goats again, they were built up in the mountainous areas, and they're very good at being on hillsides and things like that, and they don't mind those kind of things. And they can have very close bonds with humans, especially if they're being milked, because you are going out and doing that every day and building that relationship. There are other sort of if we get into symbolism of goats, there's a lot of myths as well around goats, like I talked about earlier, in different cultures. So in a classical myth, there's Almathea, who is either a nymph who fed the infant god Jupiter with goat's milk, or the goat who suckled the infant. Let's see. It says in another legend, the god broke one of the goat's horns, endowing it with the power to fill itself with whatever its owner wanted, making it the cornucopia, or the horn of plenty. In Norse mythology, the god of thunder, Thor, has a chariot that is pulled by the goats Tangersnir and Tangjoster. So there's also the Yule goat in a Scandinavian Christmas tradition. So sometimes in the past, goats may have been slaughtered around that time of year, and Yule is Christmas time. And so it would sort of be in the same way that like a lot of rituals happen in the past. It would be sort of like worshipped and then also slaughtered around that time of year. Let's see. There's a lot of different things. The goat's one of the 12-year cycles of animals which appear in the Chinese zodiac. There's also hybrid, mythical creatures that contain goat parts like the chimera. The Capricorn constellation sign in the Western zodiac is usually depicted as a goat with a fish's tail, and fauns and satyrs are mythical creatures with human bodies and goat's legs. The lustful Greek god Pan similarly has the upper body of a man and the horns and the lower body of a goat. So we do get, again, multiple places of these goats sort of being seen as like devilish, or and like we talked about earlier, in Christianity the devil is sometimes depicted like Baphomet as a goat, and so the animal is a significant symbol through Satanism. Sometimes the inverted pentagram of Satanism is depicted with a goat's head of Baphomet, which originated from the Church of Satan. So almost like this taking back of the Christian symbol of a goat as devilish, and sort of like flipping that on its head and saying like, okay, actually we're going to like worship that. Because again, goats are sort of seen, at least from what I understand, as devilish because they're not very compliant. They get out, they do things on their own, they are independent, versus sheep that go with the herd. Again, we have a lot of phrases about sheep, and different ideas about sheep that are also talked about in the Bible, and goats are seen as being, defiant in that way, and that is part of why they get depicted that way. From TanyaCastile.com, she talks about goats and meaning and symbolisms, about being about tenacity, independence, perseverance, and determination, traits that can inspire us to strive for success even in the face of obstacles. Goats are known for the incredible ability to climb steep, rocky terrains, often reaching places that seem impossible to access. The tenacity teaches us that no goal is too high if we are willing to keep pushing forward regardless of the challenges. Much like the goat that persistently searches for food or safe footing on treacherous cliffs, we can learn to pursue our ambitions with a steady focus and resilience. Another important symbolism of the goat is self-sufficiency. Goats are natural foragers capable of finding sustenance in harsh environments. They rely on their instincts to survive. Their independence encourages us to develop self-reliance and resourcefulness instead of depending solely on others for support and guidance. The goat teaches us to trust our inner wisdom and take initiative. Goats are also symbolic of curiosity and exploration. They're known for their inquisitive nature. They're very smart, often investigating new objects or climbing to greater heights simply to satisfy their curiosity. This reminds us to approach life with a sense of curiosity and willingness to explore beyond our comfort zones. Whether it's trying something new or expanding our knowledge, embodying the goat's curiosity can lead to personal growth and new opportunities. Just as a goat ventures into unknown areas with confidence, we too can embrace the unknown with the spirit of adventure, allowing us to learn more about ourselves and the world around us. All right, so let's get into some of the tarot, its relation to the tarot. So I pulled the devil card from the Desert Illuminations tarot deck, which again, usually the devil is depicted with horns like a goat, or like, Baphomet, and this one is sort of depicted like, it's a sort of like comical depiction of it, and it's very like bright colors, but it does have this, it's like a satyr, or where it has like the goat legs and then human like upper half, and then has horns, like you see in the Chronicles of Narnia, and so often, in tarot decks, it might get depicted as goat-like or devilish, and like I said, from what I understand, goats get referred to as, or sort of brought into this, because of how they are seen as independent, associated with rebellion or judgment. There's also a parable of the sheep and goats. And I mean, we use the word scapegoat. It says, in the Day of Atonement rituals, a goat was designated as a scapegoat, symbolically carrying the sins of the people and sent away. Jesus uses the imagery of goats and sheep to represent the righteous and the unrighteous. The goats are associated with those who fail to care for the least of these, while the sheep represent those who show compassion. And again, I think this is sort of because of their natural behaviors. While goats are not inherently evil, they're often used as metaphors for those who are rebellious or outside of God's favor. And so again, if you know sort of Christian things or were raised with that at all, you might already have this idea about goats versus sheep there. So other cards I pulled were from the Anima Mundi tarot deck. The chariot card is represented as a ram. So this is more of like a bighorn sheep looking depiction of a goat, or yeah, I guess it's potentially a sheep. Although, let me look. Does a ram specifically mean it's a sheep? Okay, yeah, it is. So this is actually depicting a sheep here, but it has sort of those curling horns. So they are also a ruminant, animal like like goats, but slightly different. And so generally the chariot is depicted as like horses, but I wondered if this was sort of bringing it back to the depiction of Thor with his goats. I'll see if what it says in the book here about the chariots. The chariot is a self-reliant, energetic, and strong. You'll be met with competition and many obstacles, but your willpower and focus will lead to ultimate success. Have faith in yourself, take the reins, and be in control of your destiny. So it's all about determination, willpower, conquest, focus, assertion, victory, and self-control. And again, it's called a ram in here. And then the other card I pulled is actually from the Citadel, a fantasy oracle deck by Fen Inkwright, because I didn't find a lot of goat imagery in my tarot decks, but in this one there's the shepherd that sort of depicts a goat's skull, although of course shepherds can be of sheep, or like a shepherd is just like of different animals, the person that sort of goes out and guides the animals. So I'm going to find that in here, and we're going to talk about, so there's sort of this like duality, right? There's the like, oh, they go along with the flow, they go along with other people, they guide the flock, right? Like sort of these ideas about shepherds. And then there's also this like, oh, they're independent, they do their own thing, they always want to stand on everything, they're always getting out of their enclosures idea about goats. So it says, on a gentle grassy rise just beyond the citadel, white spotted goats bleat and graze. So it's a goat depicted here. The sun bathes the hills in warmth, heavy-headed dandelions nod lazily, and all is peaceful. From under a shady tree, the shepherd watches their flock, the bell at the end of their crook ringing out over the slopes. It's a simple life, but the shepherd knows how to celebrate the pleasure of loving and loving well. As is a leader and parental figure, they ensure that their flock doesn't go astray no matter the weather or the direction. It's time for you to look to your own relationships, family or otherwise, and reach out to them. Just as the shepherd guides the flock, don't be afraid to take the leading hand where it's needed. Someone needs to step up, and right now, that's you. So that is what we're being encouraged with this shepherd card with the goat here. And then let's go ahead and dive in and see what the cards have to say on this topic. So what message do goats have for us today? What can we learn or embody from their independent and curious nature? Okay, I'm going to pull from the Sacerbito Tarot deck by Sassia Burrington. See what message goats have for us today. pulled the Four of Swords reversed. So let's see here. So reversed, it's about restlessness, overworking, fear of missing out, and fear of sitting still. Alternatively, being too inactive, listless, unmotivated, or inspired. If you haven't moved in a long time, your mind tells you it's really difficult to gain traction and momentum. Remember that you can tell your mind what to do. Take little steps and get back into the fight. Okay, so we are recalibrating. We are, right, maybe taking a break for some things. And we're moving around physically, right? Just like our goats, we're going to be walking around, we're going to be curious, seeing what's going on, and not just kind of falling into our normal rhythms where sometimes we can get really caught up in work or fear of missing out, right? Or sitting still, where we're not taking time to actually rest or be interested in the things that we want to really put our time and energy into. All right. Well, in closing, if you'd like to join me on the journey of using the tarot for transformation, click on the link in the show notes to indicate your interest to get more of that information. We'll be working together for 12 weeks of calls and journaling to discover what happens when we want to transform our lives through the tarot. And links for the tarot decks will always be in the show notes or on my website if you'd like to look at them and purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday, for all of 2025. And you can email me, me@CamilleSaunders.com, with thoughts, questions, and more. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.